I was reborn back to the day when my elder sister threatened to kill herself. But this time, the person she was begging to marry had become the crown prince, my husband from my previous life. As I looked at her with suspicion, Jiangnan took my hand and whispered, "Chang'an, do you believe in reincarnation?" I bit my lip and stared at her intently. Seeing my older sister kneeling on the ground again, I was overcome with anger. Without a word, I slapped her across the face, sending her crashing to the ground. What is so good about the third prince? Are you so infatuated that you've lost all sense of shame and abandoned your parents? Jiangnan, look at yourself now. Where is even a shred of the dignity of a noble lady? In my previous life, my elder sister was the most beautiful woman in the capital. Not only was she unmatched in beauty, but she was also skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. What was even more rare was her noble status. The Shin family was a hereditary marquisate. Her father held military power, and her mother's family was the wealthiest in Jiangnan. The Shin family's status was so exalted that even princesses could not compare. As the eldest daughter of this generation, Jiangnan was even more extraordinary, unmatched in the world. Yet she had fallen for the destitute third prince. She disregarded all moral principles and insisted that her parents marry her to the third prince. She even threatened to kill herself to force her father to support the third prince's rise to power. However, the third prince, Lu Heng, was not a man of honor. After ascending the throne, he quickly turned against the Shin family. He accused them of treason and had the entire Shin family executed. The men of the Shin family were all subjected to the brutal punishment of being sliced into 1,000 pieces. The women were skinned alive and turned into fans. The blood filled the sky, staining half of the capital city red. The pain and despair of that day still echo in my bones every day. Perhaps heaven took pity on the Shin family for their unjust suffering and gave me a second chance. When I opened my eyes, I found myself back on the day my elder sister begged to marry him. I made up my mind, this time, I would stop her at all costs. I thought it would take some effort. But to my surprise, my elder sister rose gracefully and said, "My sister is right. The third prince is not the right match for me." I stared at her in disbelief. In my previous life, my elder sister was willing to give up her own life for that man. How could she change her mind so easily after a little persuasion from me? The next moment, I saw her eyes redden slightly as she lowered her head and murmured, "I lived my life in vain. Only at the moment of death did I realize who truly loved me. Perhaps heaven allowed me to live again so that I would not miss out on Lu Zhao once more." Lu Zhao, the crown prince of the current dynasty. My husband from my previous life. What is his connection to Jiangnan? As I looked at her with a mix of confusion and suspicion, Jiangnan took my hand and whispered, "Chang'an, do you believe in reincarnation?" Of course I do. But looking at my eldest sister now, I wasn't sure if I should reveal the truth that I too had been reborn. So I bit my lip and listened quietly to what she had to say. Jiangnan, with red eyes, pulled me to a secluded corner and spoke softly. In my previous life, I failed to judge people properly and insisted on marrying Lu Heng. Little did I know that after he ascended the throne, he banished me to the cold palace. He made his childhood sweetheart, his cousin, his empress. It turned out that everything I had done was merely paving the way for them. I am so resentful. Jiangnan told me many things about how Lu Heng's cousin, Du Yuerong, had betrayed her with her words and actions. She even caused her to miscarry, losing the child in her womb. However, I listened with little interest. Compared to the lives of the 372 members of the Shin family, the petty jealousy between her and Du Yuerong was utterly insignificant. So I lost patience and blurted out, "What does this have to do with the crown prince? Why are you suddenly thinking of marrying him again?" In my previous life, after Jiangnan married the third prince, I married the Crown Prince Liu Zhao. However, there was little affection between us, we merely maintained a facade of mutual respect. Since the Shen family had staked everything on the third prince, Liu Heng, Liu Zhao quickly lost his power. After Liu Heng ascended the throne, Liu Zhao was demoted to a commoner and confined to house arrest. Soon after, the entire Shen family was executed. During my lifetime, I never heard Liu Zhao mention Shen Changning. At the time of our deaths, Liu Zhao was confined, and Shen Changning was trapped in the cold palace. How did these two become connected? What happened after my death? Shen Changning's gaze flickered. She seemed reluctant to mention the fact that the Shen family had been wiped out because of her. She quickly brushed it aside with 2 sentences. Originally, I thought there was no hope left for me in this life. I never expected Liu Zhao to rebel. It turns out he had been lying low, biding his time. When he rose up, he wrote a manifesto denouncing Liu Heng's crimes. One of the charges was the unforgivable sin of stealing his wife. When she mentioned this, Shen Changning's eyes lit up. A few tears of emotion welled up in her beautiful eyes, like falling stars. Only then did I realize that Liu Zhao had always been in love with me. It was only because Liu Heng had stolen me away that he had to endure the pain of letting me go. After learning that I was suffering, he regretted his decision. That's why he rebelled and wanted to take me away. Shen Changning seemed a bit excited. Her face flushed with color. But as she spoke, her mood grew somber again. Unfortunately, in my previous life, I didn't get to wait for him. After Liu Heng saw that proclamation, he forced me to drink a cup of poison. Shen Changning clutched her handkerchief, bit her lips, and said firmly, "In my previous life, I lost the man I loved. In this life, I will not let him down. I will be with Liu Zhao and help him ascend the throne. Let Liu Heng and Duerong regret it for the rest of their lives." As her emotions ran deep, Shen Changning shed 2 more tears. I just stared at her coldly. In my heart, I cursed her as a fool. In my previous life, if Liu Zhao truly loved Shen Changning, how could he not have shown any signs of his feelings before she was married off? In the Great Zhou dynasty, the customs were open, and it was common for unmarried men and women to secretly pledge their love to each other. Young men and women exchanging poems and making plans to travel together were extremely common. But Liu Zhao never did any of that. After Shen Changning married, he never showed the slightest sign of being heartbroken. Later, the entire Shen family was executed. If Liu Zhao truly loved Shen Changning, how could he have chosen to bide his time and stand by idly while her entire family was slaughtered? When he finally made his preparations for rebellion, he pretended it was for Shen Changning. Did he not know that Shen Changning was in Liu Heng's hands at the time? Once Liu Zhao's proclamation was issued, there was no way Liu Heng would spare her. No. He knew. He did it on purpose. The Shen family was a clan of loyal martyrs. And at that time, only Shen Changning remained. Liu Zhao deliberately provoked Liu Heng to kill the last member of the Shen family. His goal was to stir up public outrage. This would make his rebellion appear more justified. Such a blatant tactic. And my older sister actually believed it. I couldn't help but recall some stories I had read in old novels. In those stories, the protagonist, who was originally stupid and kind-hearted, was persecuted by others. After being reborn, they became as if reborn, incredibly wise. Those who once looked down on them now looked at them with new respect. At the time, I found it strange. Do fools become wise after dying once? Is death some kind of elixir? Now I see that no matter how many times a fool dies, they remain just as foolish. Looking at my elder sister before me, I said softly, "The third prince says he is fond of you, at least he sends you new trinkets every day. When you fell into the water, he risked his life to save you. The crown prince has barely seen your face a few times. He writes a few lines of love in a proclamation. Do you really believe he loves you so much that he can't live without you? If every man in the world wrote a few articles and included some sweet words, would she really marry each one of them? Shin Changning widened her eyes and glared at me with a pout. He was willing to rebel for me. If it weren't for deep-rooted love, how could he go to such lengths? I was so angry I laughed. Lu Zhao is rebelling for her? It's clearly for the supreme imperial power. My older sister. How could she be so naive and foolish? I sighed deeply, trying to use the last remnants of our sisterly bond to persuade her. However, Shin Changning looked at me deeply. Chang'an, do you also have feelings for Lu Zhao? In our previous life, you were husband and wife. But as far as I know, you weren't deeply in love. Lu Zhao has always had only me in his heart. I know you might feel resentful, but since heaven has given me the chance to be reborn, it's to make up for the time we missed. In this life, no matter what, I won't let go. I stared at her intently. My heart felt icy cold. In the previous life, before I died, I wasn't without resentment toward her. If it weren't for her being so infatuated, disregarding her family's opposition, and insisting on being with the third prince, the Shin family wouldn't have met such a fate. But I still forced myself to believe. It wasn't my elder sister's fault, she hadn't anticipated such an outcome. As the icy blade sliced through my skin, I was still worried. Was my elder sister in the deep palace able to escape her fate? In this new life, I swore to protect everyone in the Shin family. But it turned out that, in her heart, the lives of hundreds of Shin family members were not as important as her petty jealousy with Du Rong. The purpose of my rebirth wasn't to save my family. It was to make up for the missed opportunity with another man. I once thought Shin Changning was merely foolish, but now it's clear that two people who share the same bed can't be any different. She and Lu Heng are clearly cut from the same cloth. Selfish, cold-hearted, treating everyone who was kind to her as tools, and resorting to any means to achieve her goals. I looked at her, a faint smile curving my lips. I spoke slowly, one word at a time. Then I wish you, my elder sister, to get what you desire, but I will never let you have it. After sending off Shin Changning, I immediately found my father. In the previous life, my father was the first to be executed. My father had fought on the battlefield for years, with an unyielding spirit. Lu Heng, to humiliate him, cut off his flesh and fed it to dogs. After his death, his bones were ground into dust and scattered, ensuring he would never find peace in the afterlife. Looking at my father now, still vibrant and alive before me, I couldn't help but tear up and threw myself into his arms. Father, what's wrong? My father looked at me in surprise. Did you just argue with your sister? I shook my head. It took me a while to compose myself. Then, I slowly told him about my rebirth and my sister's as well. For me, the only purpose of rebirth was to save my family. And this was not something I could achieve alone. The power of the Shin family had reached its peak, and they were beginning to overshadow the ruler. This was something no monarch could tolerate. Even if Lu Heng hadn't ascended the throne, anyone else in his position would eventually target the Shin family. Therefore, my enemy was not Lu Heng. It was the supreme imperial power itself. To shake the very foundations of the imperial authority with just my own strength is simply too difficult. I need the entire Shin family, united as one, to find a way to survive. At first, my father did not believe in the rebirth. He thought I was just talking nonsense after reading too many storybooks. But when I accurately described the events that would unfold in the coming days, and revealed the tragic fate of the Shin mansion being raided in my previous life, after my persistent persuasion, he finally made up his mind. On an ordinary day with gentle spring sunshine, Shin Changning invited the crown prince out for a boat ride. I stood before the entire Shin clan, all the most powerful and respected members of the family. I revealed the tragic fate of the entire clan in my previous life, along with my plans and ambitions for this life. I needed their unconditional support. I intended to use this insignificant force to shake the very foundations of the corrupt dynasty and imperial power. On that day, Jiangnan received a poem from the crown prince. She was pondering what pattern to embroider on a handkerchief as a return gift. While I had become the covert ruler of the Shin clan, taking the first step toward destiny, the relationship between Jiangnan and the crown prince grew increasingly close. She shyly confided in me that the crown prince planned to propose to the emperor soon. The next day, my grandmother passed away. My father used the excuse of mourning to directly request permission from the emperor to return home. The emperor initially feigned reluctance, uttering some words of retention. But when my father stated that he was willing to voluntarily surrender his military power and simply retire to live a life of leisure as a wealthy nobleman, the emperor was so delighted that he could barely hide the smile on his face and immediately agreed. He had long coveted the Shin family's military power. Now that my father had voluntarily offered to step down, how could the emperor refuse? Needless to say, this was all part of my plan. It wouldn't be long before the emperor fell ill and passed away. The struggle among the princes for the throne would then be laid bare. In the previous life, the Shin family had been forced into the struggle, suffering severe losses. The wealth, power, and connections accumulated by the Shin clan over generations were nearly all lost. Had it not been for that, Lu Heng wouldn't have dared to act so ruthlessly after ascending the throne. This time, I have chosen to stay away from the center of the storm and watch the tigers fight from afar. Once they are all weakened and exhausted, I will simply pick up the pieces and reap the benefits. How delightful! As for military power, I will hand it over. The army is filled with my father's old subordinates, and the emperor will find it difficult to purge and replace them. Moreover, he will soon fall ill and be too preoccupied with his own affairs to pay attention to others. These old subordinates are brothers who fought alongside my father through thick and thin, who shared his joys and sorrows on the battlefield. Even without the tiger token, they would stand up for him without hesitation when he needs them, to ensure my father could leave the capital with a clear conscience. I had someone procure a potion that could make him appear dead. With the Shin family's century-long accumulation of resources, finding such a drug was not difficult. Originally, I planned to have my grandmother take the fake death potion later. But I never expected Jiangnan and the crown prince's feelings to grow so quickly. If the crown prince truly asks the emperor for her hand in marriage, the Shin family would once again be forced to align ourselves with the crown prince and get entangled in the struggle for the throne. Therefore, I had no choice but to advance the plan. On the day my grandmother passed away, Jiangnan wept so bitterly it broke my heart. Fearing she might reveal the truth, I never told her that my grandmother was only feigning death. Seeing her weep so bitterly, I finally remembered. My grandmother had always favored my older sister the most. I felt a pang of sympathy and tried to comfort her. But to my surprise, Jiangnan threw herself into my arms and cried, "Now that grandmother is gone, I must observe the 3-year mourning period. Lu Zhao will have to wait another 3 years for me. Why couldn't grandmother wait a little longer? Until I married Lu Zhao? She always said she wanted to see me get married. Didn't she?" My gaze grew colder by the second. I thought she was still the daughter of the Shin family and would care about her relatives. But it turned out she was despising us because we were standing in the way of her pursuit of love. Fine. That's just great. Since she's so eager to be with her lover, why shouldn't I help her? I held Jiangnan in my arms without expression and spoke in the most seductive voice I could muster. "Lu Zhao has waited for you his entire life. Can you bear to make him wait any longer? Tonight, everyone will be at the ancestral hall to keep vigil for our grandmother, and the backyard will be unguarded. Sister, think this through carefully. I'll leave it at that." That night, Jiangnan did not appear at the ancestral hall. She secretly escaped from the Shin family and went to the prince's mansion, never to return. My father announced to the outside world that she had died of illness due to excessive grief over our grandmother's passing. From then on, the Shin family had no longer a legitimate eldest daughter named Shin Changning. Several months later, a concubine appeared by the prince's side. It was said that she bore a striking resemblance to the former first beauty of the capital, Shin Changning, the eldest daughter of the Shin family. However, whenever anyone speculated that she was Shin Changning herself, they were met with mockery and ridicule. As the saying goes, if you marry her, she becomes your wife; if you elope with her, she becomes your concubine. How could a noble woman from a distinguished family stoop so low as to elope and become someone's concubine? Moreover, the Shin family was still in mourning. Her own grandmother had just passed away. Yet she was already rushing to become a concubine. How shameless must she be? Therefore, they concluded that this woman could not possibly be Shin Changning. She merely bore a passing resemblance. She was likely purchased from some brothel in the capital. The Shin family originally hailed from the water towns of Jiangnan. Every year, the women of the household would return to their hometown for a visit. This time, however, they had returned to lie low. A dragon lies in wait in the depths, biding its time. These days, I often find myself thinking, in her previous life, Shin Changning died because she trusted the wrong man. Now she has been given a second chance at life. As the saying goes, if one had known 3 years in advance, one could have enjoyed wealth and honor for 1,000 years. Instead of using this opportunity to take control of her own destiny, she chose to place her fate once again in the hands of another man. The storybooks I read in the past were mostly like this. A woman's greatest blessing is to meet a man who loves her. A woman's greatest misfortune is for that man to fall out of love with her. A woman's way of revenge is either to find another man who is more outstanding than him to vindicate herself, or to simply die and put an end to it all. And the husband who had tormented her so much before, because of her death, suddenly came to his senses. He must have felt 1,000 pains and 100 regrets. It seems that a woman's life is inevitably tied to a man. To make a man fall deeply in love with her is the greatest reward. But I have searched through countless books and have never found a man whose life was dedicated to a woman, willing to risk his life for her. In those women's manuals and moral teachings, praise women who are deeply in love with men as chaste and virtuous. Yet in the sacred texts men read, such behavior is strongly condemned. Men who are obsessed with romantic love are deemed to be petty, cowardly, and worthless. How shameful and ridiculous! If women truly believed the lies men had concocted, they would inevitably become their slaves, to be toyed with and trampled upon. I put away the musical instruments and paintings of the women's quarters, and abandoned my needlework and cooking skills. I began to frequent the study, picking up the 4 books and 5 classics. Under the guidance of my father and brothers, I gradually began to study military strategy and archery. At first, some people pointed fingers at me. They believed that women learning such things was utterly ridiculous. What kind of noble woman would study such trivialities? But I always had my own scale, my own standard of measurement. Whether something is good or bad, you cannot judge by what others say, but by what they do. They may say that women studying the 4 books and 5 classics, military strategy, and archery is laughable. Yet they take pride in their own achievements in these areas. They claim that needlework and cooking are the hallmarks of a virtuous wife and mother. Yet if a man shows interest in these skills, he would be mocked by everyone. Good things do not become bad simply because they are done by a woman. Bad things do not become good simply because they are done by a woman. They are merely using such means to tame women into the image they desire. Their hearts are deserving of condemnation. If one truly believes their nonsense, one will be doomed to a life of servitude for all eternity. The Shin family lay low in Jiangnan for 3 years. During those 3 years, the Shin family did only two things. The first was to disperse their entire fortune. My maternal family had been imperial merchants for generations, wealthy enough to rival a nation. My maternal grandfather passed away early, leaving behind only my mother as his sole daughter. She inherited the entire fortune. In the previous life, the downfall of the Shin family was partly due to this immense wealth. In this life, rather than waiting for the emperor to confiscate their assets, the Shin family chose to donate everything voluntarily. The current emperor is incompetent and tyrannical, leaving the people in dire straits. Upon arriving in Jiangnan, the Shin family voluntarily donated funds to repair irrigation systems, dig canals, and establish schools. They also set up numerous charitable institutions across the region, specifically to care for abandoned infants, elderly widows and widowers, and destitute women without homes. During times of drought or flooding, they opened their granaries to provide relief. In just a few short years, the entire Jiangnan region knew the name of the Shin family. The common people erected shrines in honor of the Shin family, regarding the Shin clan as their saviors. Refugees from all over the country flocked to Jiangnan. For a time, many people knew only the Shin family and not the emperor. The Shin family's reputation and influence reached an unparalleled height. However, I was not concerned that this would attract the emperor's suspicion, because all these acts of kindness were initiated by the women of the Shin family. On the surface, they would praise us for our compassionate hearts and kind-heartedness. Behind our backs, however, they would sneer and call it the kindness of women. Some even began to think, the Shin family has handed over their military power and surrendered their wealth. This must be a sign of their impending decline. The Shin family's daughters, once sought after by many families, now found themselves unmarried and neglected. If these actions had been initiated by my father or brothers, people would undoubtedly assume the Shin family, with both power and wealth, is now attempting to win the hearts of the people. They must be plotting rebellion. The same actions, yet the attitudes differ so greatly simply because the people behind them are different. How truly laughable. However, I believe that the hearts of the people are the clearest. They will judge for themselves who truly cares for them. The second thing the Shin family did in Jiangnan was to raise an army. Of course, they couldn't do it openly. Several of my elder brothers pretended to be idle playboys, spending their days hunting and carousing. When martial artists and heroes from the common folk came to join them, they spared no expense. In the eyes of the aristocratic youths, my brothers mingling with a bunch of thieves and rogues was a disgrace. But to those martial artists, my brothers were rare men of honor, mentors who recognized their talent. Heroes of the martial arts world valued righteousness above life and death, and a promise was worth 1,000 pieces of gold. In my eyes, the value of these people far exceeded that of well-trained soldiers. Additionally, since the women of the Shin family often went out to perform acts of kindness, the Shin family used concerns for the safety of the ladies of the house as an excuse to recruit many household soldiers. These soldiers were all personally trained by my father. Each of them is an elite warrior capable of fighting 10 men. Over the course of 3 years, the Shin family has amassed tens of thousands of household guards, secret agents, and retainers. The officials in Jiangnan and the ministers in the imperial court have all been bribed by us. Not a single person has reported this matter to the emperor. A hidden dragon should not be used. The Shin family has endured the time when it must bide its time and remain hidden. When the dragon appears in the field, it is advantageous to see the great man. Now is the time to reveal our talents and demonstrate our abilities and aspirations. The Shin family has been operating in Jiangnan for 3 years. The entire region has almost become the Shin family's backyard. After 3 years of mourning, it was finally time to return to the capital. As soon as I arrived, I received a letter from Shin Changning. He invited me to visit the prince's mansion. It was strange. In the past 3 years, she never once thought of her relatives in Jiangnan. Not even a single letter was sent. Now she suddenly puts on this act of deep sisterly affection. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Most likely, someone is behind this. Though I know this is no ordinary gathering, I still go with an open mind. After 3 years apart, I am also curious. How is the older sister who once believed she had married for love faring now? Shin Changning has grown much thinner. She was always slender, but now her waist is barely an inch wide. Once upon a time, she was renowned for her ethereal beauty, graceful and otherworldly. But now, she is adorned with jewels and heavy makeup. She exudes a vulgar, stiff, and petty air. Yet she herself is oblivious to the change, smugly believing herself to be the epitome of earthly wealth and beauty. She resembles those from humble backgrounds who suddenly strike it rich. With their arrogant demeanor, Shin Changning has a good facial structure, though her taste has grown vulgar. She remains a first-rate beauty. However, it is the beauty of a concubine. It was entirely different from the elegant and dignified beauty of women from distinguished families. In just a few short years, a person could change so much. How have you been these past few years, sister? I asked indifferently. Though I am in Jiangnan, I have heard rumors about the capital. The crown prince married the daughter of the chancellor as his primary wife 2 years ago. Judging by Shin Changning's appearance, it's clear that the primary wife isn't easy to get along with. Sure enough, as soon as I asked, Shin Changning began to complain endlessly. She spoke only of trivial matters within the inner quarters. The crown prince's wife had her servants withhold her allowance. The crown prince's wife spoke ill of her in front of the crown prince. The crown prince's wife scolded her for not having children after all these years in the household. And the servants mocked her behind her back, calling her a hen that couldn't lay eggs. All trivial matters, recited so monotonously that I felt sleepy. Yet Shin Changning grew increasingly aggrieved, her eyes soon brimming with tears. Thus, I could only force myself to ask impatiently, "What about the crown prince? Didn't you say he loved you deeply? Didn't he step in to defend you?" The Shin family upholds strict moral standards. My father had only one wife, no concubines. Therefore, I know little about matters within the inner quarters. However, during banquets in the past, I often heard the ladies and young misses complain about their own household affairs. It was mostly the main wives accusing the concubines of being seductive. The concubines, in turn, complained that the main wives were too harsh. Both sides had their own perspectives, and they were as hostile as water and fire. At that time, I thought to myself, they hate each other so much because of the suffering they've endured. But the one who truly put them in such a miserable situation is clearly that selfish, unfaithful husband. However, regardless of which side they were on, they all tacitly omitted their husbands from their verbal battles. It was clearly the men who had done wrong. Yet the women blamed and complained to one another, venting their frustration on another woman who was also a victim. Meanwhile, the man who had done wrong not only remained completely uninvolved. He would even shake his head and say, "Only women and petty people are difficult to deal with." He mocks them all. It's truly disgusting. Sure enough, when I mentioned the crown prince, Shin Changning's eyes widened in displeasure. The affairs of the inner quarters are women's business. How could I bring them up to embarrass the crown prince? Shin Changning seemed to be scolding me for being ignorant. After a pause, she added, "The crown prince is very kind to me. But men are not as thoughtful as women. There are many things he doesn't notice. And I don't want to bother him with them. They're not big deals anyway, just endure them and they'll pass." Humph. I snorted in derision. If he truly cared, how could he not notice? He's just too lazy to bother. As if to emphasize how much the crown prince values her, Shin Changning added, "He said that marrying the crown princess was merely a matter of circumstance. The only one he truly loves is me. All these years, I've been his only concubine. The other princes all have several. When mentioning that she was the crown prince's only concubine, Jiangnan seemed a bit proud. The glow on her face couldn't be contained. I felt utterly disgusted. My tone grew cold. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. I didn't even bother with small talk and just wanted to leave. But Jiangnan grabbed my hand. Wait! I have something to discuss with you. She bit her lip, seeming to struggle to speak. I've been in the palace for years without a child. The crown prince doesn't mind. But others can't help but gossip. You are young and in good health. If you were to enter the mansion, you could surely bear the crown prince a son or daughter. Then, the two of us could join forces and overthrow the crown princess. She hesitated for a moment before finally revealing her true intentions. My dear sister, you actually want me to accompany you to become someone else's concubine. You even want me to bear several children to serve as your bargaining chips in the palace intrigues. A wave of disgust swept over me. I no longer spared her any mercy and coldly laughed, saying, "Do you think everyone is as self-degrading as you? Eagerly rushing to become someone else's concubine? As the legitimate daughter of the Shin family, I am meant to be a wife, not a concubine, and I have not the slightest interest in your crown prince. Even if he were to offer me the title of crown princess, it would not catch my eye." When I uttered the words self-degrading, Jiangnan's face turned deathly pale. She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes brimming with tears. After a moment, she opened her mouth to say something, but a voice suddenly interrupted her. "Ninger, go down first." The crown prince Lu Zhao finally appeared. Jiangnan shot me a resentful glance before turning and leaving. When I received Jiangnan's invitation, I knew there must be Lu Zhao's influence behind it. In fact, I was fully aware of his true intentions. Over the past few years, I had been making a name for myself in Jiangnan. I excelled in poetry and prose, rivaling even the men in the academy. I had done countless good deeds, and everyone praised the eldest daughter of the Shin family for her compassionate heart. More importantly, using my memories from my previous life, I had successfully predicted several disasters and set up arrays to pray for rain. With my deliberate encouragement, the people began to worship me as a goddess. They believed I was sent by heaven to perform divine arts. Rumors even spread that whoever obtained Jiangnan would rule the world. Nonsense. If I truly had the power to sway the fate of the world, why would I willingly be passed around among men, to be treated like an object to be taken and discarded? Wouldn't it be better to rule the world myself? The moment I entered the capital, I knew I would be an excellent bait. The struggle for the throne had lasted 3 years, leaving only the crown prince and the third prince's factions. Now, the two sides were deadlocked, both in need of fresh blood. And I, along with the Shin family I represented, had become the crucial pawn. I just didn't expect the one who couldn't hold back first would be the crown prince. It seems he's truly been pushed to the brink by the third prince. Lu Zhao looked at me with eyes full of love. "Jiangnan, you've always been the only one I've ever loved. Your sister is just a stand-in. If you're willing to marry me, the position of crown princess will be yours. Once I ascend the throne, you will be the only empress." Lu Zhao's lies were utterly pathetic. I suspect Jiangnan is too stupid, so he thinks I, as her sister, must be equally foolish. Even his lies are so half-hearted. I didn't want to say more, so I coldly laughed. Those who follow different paths cannot walk together. Your Highness, take your heartfelt words and tell them to your concubines. This servant is not worthy of such kindness. Lu Zhao stared at me for a moment. Then he suddenly gave a meaningful smile. "Not bad. Compared to your sister, you at least have some brains. But, Jiangnan, do you really think that after entering the prince's mansion today, you'll be able to leave? No sooner had he finished speaking than a group of guards surrounded me, encircling me completely. Ignoring my screams and curses, they forcibly dragged me away. A few days later was the princess consort's birthday. The crown prince planned to pretend to be drunk that night and have relations with me. He would then have guests brought in to witness our affair. This would force me to marry him. When Jiangnan spoke with a smug expression, revealing that this plan was her gift to the crown prince, I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Jiangnan, I spoke softly. Am I your own flesh and blood? Nothing more than a tool to please men? My heart was filled with pity. My dear sister, this is your last chance. Jiangnan smiled and met my gaze. Jiangnan, I know you're strong-willed. But if you ever experience the taste of love, you'll understand. In the end, a woman's life is nothing more than seeking priceless treasures and finding a man who truly loves her. One day, you'll thank me. I silently looked away. Just now, Jiangnan missed her last chance. To me, she is no longer my elder sister. She is the one who killed the Shen family. She is the one who tried to push me into the fire. I will no longer show her mercy. Only 3 days remain until the crown princess's birthday. This time is enough. It is time to act and decide the fate of the kingdom. Lu Zhao had been eagerly awaiting the crown princess's birthday. He wanted to make me his puppet. But now, he was staring at me in terror, his hands trembling as he gripped his sword. You demoness! What have you done? I smiled calmly. Has the crown prince never heard the rumors? I am the reincarnation of a goddess. Such trivial sorcery as stealing the sun is child's play for me. It is now noon. This should be the time of day when the sun is at its peak. Yet outside, it is pitch black. The sun, which should be hanging in the sky, has vanished. The entire capital city is in chaos. Countless citizens have rushed to the streets, kneeling and wailing, believing that a great disaster is upon them. In my previous life, the capital city had also experienced such an anomaly. The sun vanished, and daylight ceased to exist. 3 days and 3 nights of darkness followed. The people believed it was a punishment from heaven and were filled with terror. However, over the years, I have studied ancient texts. From a highly obscure ancient book, I learned that this was merely an astronomical phenomenon known as a solar eclipse. Once the time passed, everything would return to normal. It would not cause any harm to the world. But this did not prevent me from using it as a means to an end. Those who achieve great things will stop at nothing. The entire prince's mansion was in chaos. Even Lu Zhao, who had previously looked down upon the title of Divine Maiden, now gazed at me with a hint of fear in his eyes. I continued to play the role of a divine being, stalling for time. Your Highness has defied the divine messenger and disrespected the heavens. You will surely be struck by divine retribution and meet an untimely end. Just then, a soldier rushed in frantically. Prince, something terrible has happened. The third prince has led his troops into the palace. What? Lu Zhao roared, no longer paying attention to me. He grabbed his sword and turned to rush toward the door. However, the moment he turned around, the soldier behind him suddenly pulled out a dagger and stabbed him in the neck. Blood spurted out. As he fell to the ground, Lu Zhao's eyes widened in shock. Perhaps he was terrified that the divine retribution I had spoken of would come so quickly. I chuckled softly. The soldier knelt on the ground respectfully and said, "The third prince has followed your orders and led the troops into the palace. The crown prince's mansion has also been captured by the elite troops led by Deputy General Chen. He sent me to tell you to wait for him for a moment. Once he has stabilized the situation, he will come to greet you personally." While waiting for Lu Heng, Jiangnan burst in like a madwoman. She cursed me for consorting with the person who had killed the Shen family in the previous life and used her until she died. She grabbed a pair of scissors and tried to fight me to the death. I snatched the scissors from her hand and pinned her hands to the table. After breaking both her legs, Jiangnan finally stopped screaming. She had fainted. Knowing she couldn't hear me, I still leaned close to her ear and said with relish, "The world is bustling with people coming for gain. The world is chaotic with people going for gain. There are no eternal enemies in this world. The third prince is a useful pawn. So I used him." The time I connected with the third prince was much earlier than Jiangnan imagined. When she was reborn and chose to throw herself into the arms of the crown prince, the third prince changed his strategy and set his sights on me, who was still a child at the time. He thought I was young and easy to deceive. I played along with him. Gradually, I pretended to be deeply in love with him. During the years I spent away from the capital, hiding in Jiangnan, I needed a useful puppet to stay in the capital. And he was the one I chose. From my previous life, I knew that the second prince and the fourth prince were no match for the crown prince. And with the crown prince holding absolute power, securing the throne was not what I desired to see. Thus, I began to support the third prince, challenging the crown prince's authority. People believed that the third prince's rapid rise was due to the efforts of his wife, Lady Su, and her powerful family. But in reality, the Su and Du families, those seemingly centuries-old clans, had long been hollowed out from within. The true force supporting the third prince and enabling him to challenge the crown prince was the Shen family. Before entering the crown prince's mansion, I had already met with the third prince, Lu Heng. I told him that I would use my divine arts to conceal the heavens and block the sun at the crucial moment. He was to divide his forces into two groups. One force would rush straight to the imperial palace to seize the throne. The other would head to the crown prince's mansion to kill the crown prince and his followers. Outside the crown prince's mansion, the sounds of battle echoed loudly. I sat there calmly. After waiting an entire day and night, the third prince finally came to meet me as promised. He was covered in blood, his aura filled with murderous intent. But the look in his eyes as he looked at me was incredibly tender. "Jiangnan, I'm back." He walked toward me step by step. "I told you, on the day I ascend the throne, you will be my only empress." Lu Heng's gaze toward me was filled with unhidden obsession. I smiled slightly and took 2 steps back. "Jiangnan, you." Lu Heng spoke hesitantly, about to continue, but suddenly stopped. Earlier, he had been in a hurry to see his beloved and share his joy. He hadn't noticed that in this room, none of the soldiers in armor were familiar to him. The moment he realized this, Lu Heng's pupils dilated, and he instinctively gripped the hilt of his sword. But the next second, a head flew into the air. The body fell straight to the ground. I looked down for a moment and said indifferently, "Pick up the head. The rest should be chopped into mincemeat and fed to the dogs." When she was reborn, Jiangnan said she wanted to take revenge on Lu Heng, and her so-called revenge was to marry the crown prince and make Lu Heng regret it. But in reality, Lu Heng not only didn't regret it, he quickly married another noblewoman, Su Shi, as his wife, and continued to keep his cousin Du as a concubine. Such a beast deserves to be treated with the same methods he used on others. He sacrificed everything for the throne. I will make him shatter his dreams at the very moment he is closest to it. He left the Shen family with over 300 dead, their bodies left unburied. I will ensure he meets a similar fate, paying with his life. Even this method of death is too lenient. If possible, I would rather torture him for 49 days before killing him. But for now, the greater good comes first. While I instigated the third prince to rebel in the palace, the Shen family's troops have already been on high alert. They are waiting for him to kill the emperor and the crown prince before striking to eliminate the traitor. Lu Heng believes the throne is within his grasp. Little does he know that the real threat lies behind him. With his head, I am certain his remaining followers will soon lay down their arms and surrender. The outcome is decided. The Shin family's troops took over a day to restore order. The reason for the haste was that I needed to ascend the throne and proclaim myself emperor by the moment the solar eclipse ended. In this era, for a woman to aspire to rule like a man is harder than climbing to the heavens. Even if I were to kill those who scream that a female demon is misleading the nation, there would always be others to take their place. If the name is not proper, the words will not be heeded. If the words are not heeded, the matter will not be accomplished. To achieve my goal, I will stop at nothing, no matter the cost. In this world, the only force that can stand against the power of the ruler and the power of the Father is the power of the divine. I must make the people believe that I am the divine maiden chosen by heaven. And this solar eclipse is my greatest asset. As I walked toward the high platform, dressed in the bright yellow dragon robe, the sunlight pierced through the shadows and returned to the world. The men of the Shin family will all suffer the gruesome punishment of being sliced into 1,000 pieces. Those who survive will kneel on the ground, shouting, "Long live the emperor!" They may be genuinely moved by this divine miracle and the blessings it brings. Or they may simply be following the crowd. They preserve their reputation as loyal subjects while saving their own lives. Regardless of what these people are thinking, I care not a whit. The supreme power is now in my hands. Jiangnan once said that a woman's lifelong pursuit is nothing more than to seek an invaluable treasure is easy, but to find a loving man is rare. Nonsense. Power, status, wealth, family, friends, lovers, whatever I desire, I must obtain, and those I wish to protect, I now have the power to safeguard them completely. And this is merely the beginning. The temporary support of these ministers is, first, due to my tricks of pretending to be divine. Second, because of the power of the Shin family. Third, because of the turbulent times, forcing them to compromise. Ascending the throne is merely the starting point, not the end. This path remains arduous. One day, they will no longer follow the blind authority of the gods or compromise out of necessity. Instead, they will follow me because of my tangible achievements. Because they realize that a woman's intelligence and virtue are no inferior to a man's. Because they realize that even if she is not some divine maiden, an ordinary woman can achieve great things through her own wisdom and effort. No less than a man. Perhaps then, this path may finally glimpse its end. The road is long and arduous, but I will seek it with all my strength.